The morning sun rose over New Haven like any other day. Children laughed and played in the streets. Farmers worked in the fields under the green sky of Verdania III. Young Me stood in her garden, checking the flowers she had planted last month. Her two children, a boy and a girl, played near the house. She smiled, thinking how lucky they were to live in such a peaceful place. New Haven was celebrating today, 10 years since the first humans arrived on this planet. 10 years of building homes, growing food, and making a new life far from crowded Earth. The main square was decorated with lights and banners. Music played from speakers. People gathered to share food and stories. Ambassador Jisoo walked through the crowd, shaking hands and greeting families. She had just finished important talks with the Vrolians, the alien race that controlled the nearby star systems. The Vrolians were reptilian creatures, tall and covered in scales. They had always looked down on humans, calling them soft skins with voices full of disgust. But they traded with humans because it made them money. Jisoo felt good about the new trade agreement. Maybe the Vrolians would respect humans more now. Maybe they could build real peace. She waved to Commander Taesung, who stood near the defense station. He nodded back, though his face looked serious. Taesung always worried about security, even on celebration days. Far away, 3 star systems distant, Captain Daewon sat in his command chair aboard the warship Righteous Fury. The ship moved slowly through empty space, scanning for pirates or trouble. It was boring duty but necessary. Daewon was a veteran soldier, his face marked with old scars. He had lost his sister in a war years ago. That loss had made him hard but fair. His crew respected him. Lieutenant Hana stood at her station watching the screens. She was young but brilliant, able to see patterns others missed. "Nothing out here, Captain," she said. "Just rocks and ice," Daewon nodded. "Good. Let's hope it stays quiet." He had no idea how wrong he was. Back on New Haven, the celebration continued. Young Me bought sweet cakes for her children. They ate them with sticky fingers, laughing at each other's messy faces. The sky was beautiful, clear and green with purple clouds. Perfect weather. Then the alarm screamed. Commander Taesung ran to his console, his heart pounding. The screen showed ships. Lots of ships. Vrolian warships dropping out of hyperspace right above the planet. His hands flew over the controls. Battle stations. Everyone to shelters. This is not a drill. People stopped celebrating. Confusion turned to fear. Parents grabbed their children. The music stopped. Screams replaced laughter. Young Mai heard the alarms and felt ice in her stomach. She grabbed her children's hands. "Run! To the shelter! Now!" They ran toward the underground bunkers built for emergencies. Other families ran too, a river of terrified people. Ambassador Jisoo ran to the communication center. This had to be a mistake. They had just made peace. She opened a channel to the Vrolian fleet. "This is Ambassador Jisoo of New Haven Colony. Please explain your presence. We are a peaceful settlement. We have a trade agreement." No answer came. Instead, the Vrolian ships opened their weapons ports. Commander Taesung activated the colony's defenses. They had some shields and a few defensive cannons. Enough to stop pirates, not enough to stop a battle fleet. He fired everything they had. A few shots hit the Vrolian shields but did nothing. The Vrolians fired back. Beams of energy fell from the sky like rain. They hit buildings and exploded. The main square, where people had been celebrating moments ago, turned into a crater of fire. Hundreds died instantly. The ground shook. Windows shattered everywhere. Young Mai and her children were still running when a beam hit near them. The explosion threw them to the ground. Her ears rang. She couldn't hear her children crying, but she saw their mouths open in terror. She pulled them up and kept running. The shelter was close, just a little further. Behind them, the city burned. Smoke filled the air, black and choking. Jisoo tried again to communicate. "Stop, please. We surrender. There are children here. Families." Her voice was desperate now, no longer diplomatic. The Vrolian response was to target the communication building. A massive beam of energy struck it directly. The building exploded. Jisoo's transmission ended mid-word. Young Me reached the shelter entrance. Other families crowded around, pushing to get inside. She shoved her children through the door. "Get down. Stay down." She followed them into the darkness. The metal door closed with a heavy thud. They were safe. For now, above ground, New Haven died. The Vrolians were methodical. They targeted residential areas, schools, hospitals. Nothing was spared. Commander Taesung fought until his defense station took a direct hit. His last thought was of his wife and daughter at home. Then there was nothing. The bombardment lasted 3 hours. When it was over, fires burned across the entire colony. Every building was destroyed or damaged. The beautiful green fields were black and smoking. Then the Vrolian soldiers came down in landing craft. They searched for survivors. When they found the underground shelters, they opened them with cutting tools. People emerged, coughing and terrified, hands raised in surrender. The Vrolians shot them all. Young Mi heard the cutting sounds above. She held her children close, covering their mouths to keep them quiet. Other families huddled in the darkness. They could hear voices outside. Alien voices speaking in harsh clicking sounds. Then they heard the cutting stop. The door opened. Light flooded in, blinding after the darkness. "Please," Young Mi begged. "They're just children." The Vrolian soldier raised his weapon. 18 hours later, Captain Daewon's ship received an emergency signal. It was faint, automated, the kind sent when all other systems failed. Hana brought it up on screen. "Captain, it's from New Haven, a distress call." Daewon felt cold. "How old is the signal?" 18 hours, sir. Take us there. Maximum speed." The righteous fury jumped to hyperspace. The journey would take hours. Every minute felt like torture. Daewon sat forward in his chair, watching the countdown. His crew was silent, each person lost in their own dark thoughts. When they finally arrived at New Haven, the scene was worse than anyone imagined. The scanner showed no life signs, not one. Daewon stared at the numbers on the screen. 2.3 million people had lived on New Haven. Now those numbers read 0. Hana's voice shook. "Captain, I'm detecting debris in orbit. Looks like evacuation ships. They were destroyed trying to leave." Daewon felt something break inside him. They had hunted down the fleeing ships, killed people trying to escape. This wasn't war. This was murder. "Send probes down. I want to know everything that happened." His voice was flat, emotionless. The crew recognized that tone. Their captain was past anger now. He was in a dangerous place, a cold place where decisions were made that couldn't be undone. The probe footage came back. Daewon watched it all. The celebration, the attack, the executions. He watched Ambassador Jisoo die trying to shield a child with her own body. He watched Vrolian soldiers laugh as they killed prisoners. Lieutenant Hana turned away from her screen, tears on her face. Other crew members were crying too. Not Daewon. He watched everything, recording every detail in his memory. When the footage ended, he sat in silence for a long time. Then he opened a secure channel to Earth Defense Command. His message was short. "New Haven is gone. All hands lost. 2.3 million dead. Vrolians responsible. Send orders." He knew the response would take 6 hours to arrive. 6 hours while he sat here looking at the grave of an entire colony. 6 hours to think about what humanity would do next. Daewon stood and walked to the window. Below, New Haven burned. Smoke rose from what used to be homes, schools, parks, places where children played, where families lived. All gone. He remembered an old saying from Earth's history. Something about trying to be civilized, about giving people a chance to do the right thing, about what happens when they choose otherwise. The Vrolians had made their choice. Now humanity would make theirs. And Daewon knew, deep in his bones, that choice would shake the galaxy. The news reached Earth like a shockwave. Every screen, every device, every communication channel carried the same terrible message. New Haven was destroyed. 2.3 million humans dead. The footage from the colony's last moments spread across all human worlds within hours. People watched in horror as the Vrolians killed families. They saw children running. They saw the executions. They saw Ambassador Jisoo die trying to protect others. The images burned into everyone's minds. In the streets of Earth's cities, crowds gathered. Some people cried. Others shouted in anger. Families who had relatives on New Haven collapsed in grief. The world felt their pain. In Tokyo, London, Cairo, and Sao Paulo, millions marched demanding justice. The peaceful protesters became angry mobs. Police struggled to maintain order. Premier Borah sat in her office in Geneva, watching the chaos unfold. She was the leader of the United Earth government, chosen because she believed in peace and negotiation. She had spent her life working to avoid war. Now war had come anyway, and it had murdered millions of her people. Her hands shook as she watched the footage again. Among the dead was her nephew, his wife, their baby daughter. She had held that baby at the last family gathering, just 6 months ago. Now that baby was ash on a dead world. A message came through. The Vrolian Concordat had released a statement. Bora read it with growing rage. They claimed New Haven was harboring fugitives. They called the destruction a proportional response to human aggression. It was all lies. Everyone knew it was lies. The Vrolians weren't even trying to hide what they had done. They were proud of it. The Planetary Council was called into emergency session. Representatives from all human worlds gathered in the great chamber beneath Geneva. The room buzzed with angry voices. Everyone wanted to speak. Everyone wanted action. Bora called the meeting to order. Her voice was steady, but her eyes were red. We all know why we're here. The question before us is simple. What do we do now? Fleet Admiral Hyunwoo stood first. He was an old soldier, gray-haired and hard as stone. He had commanded human forces for 20 years and fought in every conflict humanity had faced. The military situation is clear, he said. The Vrolian Concordat controls 500 star systems. They have approximately 10,000 warships. Their technology is advanced. Their resources are vast. In a conventional war, they would crush us within 5 years. The chamber fell silent. The reality was harsh. Humanity had only 70 star systems, maybe 2,000 warships. They were outnumbered and outgunned. Representative Jinnah from the Martian colonies stood up. She was young, barely 30, but she spoke with fire. So we do nothing? We let them murder us? My cousin lived on New Haven. She was 7 years old. They shot her when she came out of the shelter. Do we just accept this? No, said Director Kyung-suk, rising from her seat. She ran Earth Intelligence Agency and knew secrets that kept her awake at night. We don't accept it. But Admiral Hyunwoo is right about the conventional situation. However, we have options they don't know about. She pressed a button and the room's displays changed. They showed files marked with the highest security classifications. For 30 years, we've been developing weapons in secret. Technologies we deemed too dangerous to reveal to the galaxy. We called it Project Prometheus. We hoped we'd never need it. The displays showed weapons that made the council members gasp. Ships that could move without being detected. Bombs that destroyed matter at the molecular level. Weapons that could tear holes in space itself. Where did these come from? Asked a counselor from Europa. Dr. Sang-min stepped forward. He was the chief weapons researcher, a quiet man who rarely left his laboratories. I designed most of them, he said softly. After the border wars, I realized that being peaceful doesn't mean being helpless. I've spent 3 decades making sure humanity has teeth. Very sharp teeth. These weapons, said another counselor, her voice trembling. They're terrible. Using them would make us no better than the Vrolians. Bora stood up. That's exactly right. These weapons could win the war, but at what cost to our souls? This is the choice before us. Do we respond with measured force and probably lose, or do we unleash hell and become monsters ourselves? The chamber erupted in arguments. Some demanded total war. Others begged for diplomacy. Hours passed. The debate raged. Bora listened to all of it, the weight of history pressing down on her shoulders. Finally, Representative Jinnah stood again. Her voice cut through the noise. I want to tell you about my cousin. Her name was Mina. She loved to draw. She wanted to be an artist. She drew pictures of flowers and stars. She was 7 years old. Jinnah's voice broke. The Vrolians shot her in the back as she ran to her mother. Do you understand? They shot a child in the back. The chamber fell silent. Jinnah continued. I'm not asking us to become monsters. I'm asking us to protect ourselves. To show the galaxy that humans won't be slaughtered like animals. Yes, we're outnumbered. Yes, they're stronger. But they made one mistake. They thought we would negotiate. They thought we would beg. They thought we were weak. She paused. They were wrong. Fleet Admiral Hyunwoo spoke again. If the council authorizes it, I can win this war. Not in 5 years. In 1 year. Maybe less. But I need complete authorization. No restrictions. No political interference. Let me do what must be done. Bora looked around the chamber. She saw anger, fear, grief, and determination on every face. These were good people facing an impossible choice. She thought about her nephew's baby, about Ambassador Jisoo dying to protect others, about 2.3 million people who woke up one morning thinking they were safe. She walked to the memorial wall that had been erected in the chamber. It displayed the names of every person who died on New Haven. The wall was huge, covered with names in small print. So many names. So many lives ended. Bora placed her hand on the cold stone. Her nephew's name was there. His wife's name. The baby's name. She stood there for a long moment, feeling the weight of every single one of those deaths. When she turned back to the council, her face was different. The peace activist was gone. In her place stood a leader who had made a choice. "My whole life I've worked for peace," she said. "I believed that violence was never the answer. I believed that with enough patience and understanding, we could solve any problem. But the Vrolians didn't want peace. They wanted to prove they were superior. They murdered our children to make that point." She walked back to her seat, her voice growing stronger with each step. "Our ancestors, particularly those who survived the darkest chapters of Earth's history, had a saying. Never again. They meant it. So do I." Bora looked at Admiral Hyunwoo. "You have full authorization. Use Project Prometheus. Use everything we have. No restrictions. Win this war. What about rules of engagement?" asked a counselor. "Simple rules," Bora replied. "No civilian targets unless they contain military assets. No genocide. No torture. We fight with everything we have, but we remain human. We show them the difference between justice and murder. When we win, and we will win, the galaxy will see that humans can be terrible in war but moral in victory." The vote was called. Every hand went up. The decision was unanimous. Earth was going to war. Fleet Admiral Hyunwoo left the chamber immediately. He had a war to plan. Dr. Sang-min went with him, already thinking about which weapons to deploy first. Director Kyung-suk began coordinating intelligence operations across hundreds of star systems. Across Earth and all human colonies, the mobilization began. Every shipyard started building warships. Every factory converted to military production. Every resource was dedicated to one purpose: victory. Young men and women volunteered for military service in numbers not seen in generations. They had seen the footage from New Haven. They knew what they were fighting for. Representative Jinnah stood on her balcony that night, looking up at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Vrolians were celebrating their victory. They thought they had intimidated humanity. They thought humans would be too scared to fight back. She smiled, and it was not a kind smile. "You wanted to see what humans do when pushed too far," she whispered to the stars. "You're about to find out." In orbit around Earth, the first of the new warships launched. They were different from anything built before. Sleeker, faster, deadlier. Each one carried weapons from Project Prometheus, weapons the Vrolians didn't know existed. Captain Dae-won received his new orders while still sitting in orbit above New Haven. He read them twice to make sure he understood. Then he called his crew together. "We have authorization," he said simply. "Operation Reckoning has begun. We're going hunting." Lieutenant Hana pulled up star charts. "Where do we start, Captain?" Dae-won pointed to a Vrolian military station 3 systems away. "There. We start by making them understand what they've done. And we don't stop until every single person responsible for New Haven faces justice." The Righteous Fury's engines powered up. Around Earth, hundreds of other ships did the same. Humanity was no longer on the defensive. The hunters had become the hunted. And the Vrolians, celebrating their easy victory, had no idea what was coming for them. The war began with silence. Vrolian outposts along the border stopped reporting in. Communication stations went dark. Patrol ships failed to return from routine missions. At first, the Vrolian commanders thought it was equipment failure, or maybe pirates attacking weak targets. They were wrong. Captain Dae-won stood on the bridge of the Righteous Fury, watching the Vrolian military station at Kepler 442 through his view screen. The station was massive, home to 10,000 Vrolian soldiers. It coordinated military operations across 5 star systems. Taking it out would hurt the enemy badly. "All ships report ready," Lieutenant Hana said from her station. Around them in space, invisible to sensors, 15 more human warships waited. They used new stealth technology that made them impossible to detect. "Send one message on all frequencies," Dae-won ordered. "Make sure they hear it clearly." Hana nodded and opened a channel. Dae-won's voice went out across space, cold and hard. "New Haven sends its regards." Then he gave the order to fire. The Prometheus weapons were nothing like conventional arms. They didn't just damage ships. They unmade them. Beams of energy that broke molecular bonds struck the station. Metal turned to powder. The station's shields, designed to stop normal weapons, did nothing against this new technology. In 3 minutes, the entire military base was gone. Not destroyed, simply gone, turned to atoms floating in space. 10,000 Vrolian soldiers died without time to understand what happened. Day-Wan felt no pleasure in it, only grim satisfaction. This was justice for New Haven. This was the price of genocide. News of Kepler 442's destruction reached the Vrolian High Command within hours. They were shocked. How had humans destroyed such a fortified position so quickly? They sent scouts to investigate. The scouts never reported back. Human ships were waiting. Fleet Admiral Hyun-woo coordinated the war from his command center on Luna. Huge displays showed every human and Vrolian position across hundreds of star systems. He studied them like a chess master studying a board. The Vrolians had numbers. Humans had surprise and technology. He planned to use both advantages until the enemy broke. "Deploy the Ghost Fleet," he ordered. "I want their supply lines cut within a week." Commander Sun-Yi received the order aboard her stealth ship Phantom Wind. She commanded 30 vessels that the enemy couldn't see. Her mission wasn't to fight battles. It was to starve the Vrolian military. Sun-Yi's ships moved through Vrolian space like ghosts. They found fuel depots and destroyed them. They located ammunition stockpiles and turned them into explosions visible from neighboring systems. They cut communication cables and sabotaged repair facilities. Within 2 weeks, the Vrolian military machine began to sputter. Ships ran out of fuel far from friendly ports. Commanders lost contact with their fleets. Soldiers waited for ammunition that never arrived. The Vrolians sent repair ships to fix the damage. Those ships mysteriously exploded before reaching their destinations. The Vrolian admirals began to panic. How were humans doing this? Their scouts reported no enemy presence in these areas. Yet the attacks continued. It was like fighting an enemy that could strike anywhere and vanish without trace. Then the real nightmare began. Colonel Jae-hun led the Orbital Drop Corps, humanity's most elite soldiers. They were trained for one thing: assassination. Not of civilians or random targets. They hunted military leadership. Generals, admirals, base commanders, anyone who gave orders. Jae-hyun's team dropped from orbit onto the Vrolian military world of Talus. They used stealth pods that looked like meteors on sensors. They landed near the headquarters of General Zalthor, who had commanded the attack on New Haven. Intelligence confirmed he personally gave the order to execute prisoners. The team moved through the night. Vrolian security was tight, but humans had spent 30 years developing infiltration technology. They passed through walls using phase generators. They avoided sensors with quantum camouflage. They reached Zalthor's quarters without alerting a single guard. Jae-hyun stood over the sleeping general. He thought about Young-mi and her children, about Ambassador Jisoo, about 2.3 million people this monster had killed. He pulled out a recording device. Zalthor woke up to find a human soldier in his room. Before he could scream, Jae-hyun stunned him. When the general recovered, he was tied to a chair facing a camera. "My name is Colonel Jae-hyun of Earth Defense Forces," Jae-hyun said calmly. "You ordered the murder of civilians at New Haven. Every execution, every child you killed, we have recorded. This recording will be sent to every Vrolian world. Your people will know what you did. Then you will stand trial." Zalthor spit at him. "You're animals, soft skins. We should have killed all of you." Jae-hyun nodded. "Thank you for that confession." He pressed a button and the general's own words were recorded. Then the team extracted, taking Zalthor with them. By morning, the recording had been broadcast across Vrolian space. The people saw their general's crimes and his contempt for life. This pattern repeated across Vrolian territory. Human teams extracted or eliminated military leaders one by one. Vrolian officers began to refuse promotions. Nobody wanted to be the next target. The command structure started to crumble, but the Vrolians were not helpless. They still had thousands of warships. They gathered a fleet of 300 ships and sent them to attack the human colony at Tau Ceti. If humans could strike at civilians, they reasoned so could Vrolians. The fleet commander, Admiral Rathven, felt confident. 300 warships against a lightly defended colony. It would be an easy victory. Revenge for Kepler 442. The fleet dropped out of hyperspace at Tau Ceti. Rathven prepared to give the bombardment order. Then his sensors went crazy. Ships appeared from nowhere. Not 300. Not even 600. Over 1,000 human warships materialized around his fleet, having waited in stealth mode. Fleet Admiral Hyunwoo had predicted this move and set a trap. Fire at will, Hyunwoo ordered from Luna. Watching through real-time feeds, the Vrolian fleet was surrounded. Prometheus weapons tore into their ships. In 20 minutes, 200 Vrolian vessels were destroyed. The remaining 100 tried to escape. Only 15 made it. Admiral Rathven's flagship was not among them. The Battle of Tau Ceti sent shockwaves through the Vrolian Concordat. They had sent a major fleet and it was annihilated. How had humans gathered so many ships? Where were they hiding them? The Vrolians began to realize they had made a terrible mistake. They thought humans were weak. They were learning otherwise. Dr. Sang-min watched the battles from his laboratory. His weapons were performing better than predicted. But he had more to show. He activated Project Ragnarok. Deep in the asteroid belt, construction crews had been building something massive. A weapon so powerful Dr. Sang-min had argued against building it. But the council insisted. If the war went badly, they needed a final option. The Ragnarok station was a fortress bristling with the most advanced weapons ever created. It could move through space and generate enough power to destroy entire fleets. Sang-min hoped they would never need it. But he made sure it was ready. Meanwhile, the war continued. Human forces pushed deeper into Vrolian space. Every battle was carefully chosen. Hyunwoo never attacked blindly. He studied enemy positions, found weaknesses, and struck with overwhelming force. The Vrolians tried to counter, but they were always one step behind. Captain Daewon's task force hit Vrolian supply convoys. Each time they broadcast the same message before attacking. Remember New Haven. The Vrolian crews knew what was coming. Some tried to surrender. Daewon accepted surrenders and treated prisoners according to the rules of war. He wanted the Vrolians to know humans could be merciful. But mercy came after justice. Lieutenant Hana tracked every Vrolian officer involved in the New Haven massacre. She made a list of 300 names. Every person who gave orders, who pulled triggers, who laughed at dying children. Captain, we've located Commander Velkar. He led the ground forces at New Haven. Daewon's jaw tightened. Send his coordinates to Colonel Jae-hyun. I want him alive to stand trial. One by one, the names on Hana's list were crossed off. Some were captured. Others died in battle. But none escaped. Human forces were relentless. They remembered every face, every crime, every victim. 6 months into the war, the statistics were clear. The Vrolian Concordat had lost 40% of its military strength. Over 4,000 warships destroyed. Hundreds of bases eliminated. Supply lines shattered. Command structure in chaos. And human casualties minimal. A few hundred soldiers. No civilian deaths at all. The galaxy watched in shock. Humanity, written off as minor players, was destroying the Concordat. Other alien civilizations held emergency meetings. If humans could do this to the Vrolians, what could they do to others? Fear spread through the galactic community. But the Vrolians were not finished. Their high command, desperate and terrified, made a final decision. If they couldn't win conventionally, they would strike at humanity's heart. They gathered every remaining warship they had. 3,000 vessels, everything they had left. And they pointed them all at one target. Earth Director Kyung-suk's intelligence network detected the buildup. She rushed to Fleet Admiral Hyunwoo's command center. Admiral, they're coming. Every ship they have. They're going for Earth. Hyunwoo looked at the projections. 3,000 ships. The warning came 48 hours before the enemy arrived. Director Kyung-suk's intelligence network had intercepted Vrolian military communications. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier the Concordat had left was moving toward one target. Earth. Fleet Admiral Hyunwoo stood in his command center on Luna, looking at the projection. 3,000 Vrolian warships. It was a massive force, bigger than anything humanity had faced before. Even with all the victories so far, this was different. If the Vrolians reached Earth's surface and deployed troops, millions would die. How long until our expeditionary fleets can return? He asked. Captain Daewon's group will arrive during the battle, an officer replied. The others won't make it in time. We're on our own for at least the first 12 hours. Hyunwoo nodded. 12 hours. That was a long time in space combat. He touched a button on his console. Activate Operation Fortress, everything. I want every hidden defense online within the hour. Across the solar system, things began to wake up. The asteroid belt, which looked empty and lifeless, suddenly came alive. Thousands of weapons platforms that had been disguised as rocks powered up their systems. Jupiter's moons revealed themselves as military installations, bristling with guns and shields. Saturn's rings, beautiful and peaceful, deployed mines that had been hidden for years. Even tiny Mercury had surprises hidden beneath its burning surface. Earth had never been defenseless. Humanity just never told anyone how well defended it really was. Major Young-Soo commanded the planetary defense grid from his station deep beneath the Himalayas. Mountains of rock protected the command center from anything short of planetary destruction. His screens showed every defensive position in the solar system, tens of thousands of them, all under his control. He had trained for this his entire career. Every simulation, every drill, every exercise had prepared him for the day when Earth faced invasion. Now that day had come. His hands were steady as he checked each system. Everything was green. Ready. On Earth's surface, Premier Bora addressed the people. Her face appeared on every screen across the planet. She looked tired but determined. Citizens of Earth, I won't lie to you. The Vrolians are coming. They want to destroy our world because they're losing the war. They think if they kill Earth, humanity dies. She paused, looking directly into the camera. They're wrong. We've evacuated essential personnel to the colonies. If Earth falls, humanity survives. But Earth won't fall. Not today, not ever. Our ancestors built this world with their sweat and blood. We're not giving it to anyone. Bora refused to evacuate to the underground bunkers. She stayed in Geneva, visible to everyone. If the people saw their leader standing firm, they would be brave too. Across Earth, civilians volunteered for Defense Corps. A woman named Yunji, a teacher from Seoul, signed up to help. She had no military training. But when the officer asked why she was volunteering, she said simply, "This is my home. If they want it, they'll have to go through me." Millions shared her courage. They filled sandbags, prepared hospitals, organized shelters. If the Vrolians made it to the surface, they would find Earth's people ready to fight with whatever they had. The Vrolian fleet arrived at the edge of the solar system. High Admiral Korvash commanded the armada from his flagship Dominance. He was old for a Vrolian, his scales scarred from decades of combat. He had opposed attacking New Haven, thinking it would provoke exactly this kind of war. But he had been overruled. Now his job was to win that war by destroying humanity's homeworld. "Advance," he ordered. "Destroy any defenses you encounter. Our target is Earth. Nothing else matters." The massive fleet moved forward, pushing into the solar system. At first, they encountered nothing. No ships, no resistance, just empty space. Korvash felt uneasy. Where were the human defenses? He got his answer at Neptune's orbit. Hidden platforms in the ice revealed themselves and fired. Dozens of Vrolian ships took damage. Korvash's fleet returned fire, destroying the platforms. But more appeared. The ice wasn't ice at all. It was camouflage hiding weapons. The Vrolian fleet fought through, losing ships but pushing forward. They reached Uranus and faced another line of defenses. More hidden weapons, more losses. The humans were bleeding them with each planet they passed. Major Young-Soo watched the battle from his command center. The outer defenses were doing their job, slowing the enemy and making them expend ammunition. But the real trap was still ahead. "Hold the inner defenses," he ordered. "Let them come deeper." At Jupiter, the Vrolian fleet faced the heaviest resistance yet. The gas giants' moons weren't moons at all. They were fortress stations with shields that could withstand tremendous damage. Korvash threw half his fleet at Jupiter's defenses. It took 6 hours of brutal fighting to break through. He lost 400 ships in the process, but he kept pushing. Earth was close now. He could see the blue planet on his screens. So small, so fragile. One good bombardment would kill billions. The asteroid belt came next. Korvash had expected resistance here. His sensors showed thousands of objects between him and Mars. Some had to be weapons platforms. He deployed his remaining forces in a wide formation and advanced carefully. The asteroids erupted. Not just dozens or hundreds of weapons platforms, thousands. They had been waiting, powered down and invisible. Now they all fired at once. The space between Mars and Jupiter became a hell of energy beams and explosions. Vrolian ships died by the dozen. Korvash's perfect formation shattered. His fleet scattered, trying to avoid the crossfire. But there was nowhere to hide. Every direction had enemies. "Keep moving," Korvash shouted. "Push through. Earth is right there." His fleet obeyed, taking terrible losses. Nearly 1,000 ships destroyed in the asteroid belt. But the survivors made it through. 2,000 warships, battered but still deadly, pushed toward Mars. Then Captain Day-Wan arrived. The righteous fury dropped out of hyperspace behind the Vrolian fleet. With it came 200 human warships, all equipped with Prometheus weapons. They had pushed their engines to the breaking point to get here in time. All ships fire at will, Day-Wan ordered. His voice was calm despite the chaos around him. Target their engines first. Trap them here. The human fleet struck the Vrolians from behind. Ships that had their shields facing forward suddenly took devastating hits from the rear. Vrolian vessels exploded. Others spun out of control, engines destroyed. Korvash realized the trap. The humans had drawn him in, bled him slowly, then hit him from behind. He was caught between Earth's defenses ahead and Day-Wan's fleet behind. Classic hammer and anvil. Forward, he ordered desperately. We must reach Earth. Break through at any cost. The Vrolian fleet charged. They passed Mars, ignoring the defenses there. They took losses but kept moving. Earth was so close. If they could just reach orbit, they could destroy the planet. Make humanity pay for every ship they lost. Major Young-Soo waited until the Vrolians passed the moon. They were deep in Earth's defensive zone now, committed, unable to retreat quickly. All stations, he said quietly. Fire. Every defensive platform around Earth opened fire simultaneously. The moon revealed weapons built into its craters. Earth's orbital platforms unleashed everything they had. The space around Earth became a storm of energy. Vrolian ships died in massive numbers. Korvash's fleet, already battered, took tremendous damage. But he had one chance left. If he could ram his flagship into Earth's defense grid, he could create a gap. Other ships could follow. They might still win. He pointed dominance toward Earth's main orbital platform and activated his engines. Full speed. The flagship accelerated, taking hit after hit but not stopping. Korvash knew he was going to die. But he would take millions of humans with him. Young-Soo saw the flagship coming. It was too big, too fast. Regular weapons couldn't stop it in time. He had one option. The Ragnarok cannon. Dr. Sangmin's most powerful weapon built into Earth's defense grid. The weapon had never been test-fired at full power. The calculations said it would work. But calculations could be wrong. If it failed, the feedback might destroy half of Earth's defenses, and the flagship would crash into the planet. Young-Soo made his decision in seconds. He had been trained to protect Earth at any cost. Ragnarok cannon, target the flagship. Full power, fire. Deep beneath the Himalayas, massive generators screamed to life. Power surged through systems designed to handle impossible energies. The Ragnarok cannon, built into the mountain itself, began to glow. A beam of pure energy lanced into space. It was so bright people on Earth's surface could see it even in daylight. It crossed the distance to Korvash's flagship in a fraction of a second. Dominance exploded. Not just exploded, vaporized. The flagship, massive and deadly, simply ceased to exist. The shockwave destroyed 20 other Vrolian ships nearby. For a moment, space itself seemed to ripple from the weapon's power. People on Earth saw a second sun appear in the sky, then fade. When their vision cleared, the Vrolian flagship was gone. The remaining Vrolian fleet broke. Their admiral was dead. Their flagship destroyed. They were surrounded and being torn apart. Some ships tried to surrender. Others tried to run. Captain Day-Wan's fleet moved to cut off escape routes. No survivors, Day-Wan said coldly. They came here to commit genocide. They don't get to leave. Lieutenant Hana looked at him, concerned. Captain, some are trying to surrender. The human armada gathered in orbit around Mars. Over 1,000 warships, every vessel equipped with Prometheus weapons. Crew members who had fought across dozens of star systems. Soldiers who had seen friends die. Everyone carried the memory of New Haven burned into their minds. Fleet Admiral Hyunwoo addressed the entire fleet through video link. His face looked older now, lined with the weight of commanding a war. We're going to Vrolian Prime. We're going to end this war. But we're not going as conquerors. We're going as liberators. Remember that. Some soldiers looked confused. Liberators? After what the Vrolians did, Hyunwoo continued. The Vrolian military murdered our people. Their government ordered genocide. But there are billions of Vrolian civilians who had no part in these decisions. They're victims of their own leadership, just like New Haven was a victim. We're going to free them from the monsters who rule them. Captain Day-Wan listened to the speech from his bridge. Part of him wanted revenge, wanted to see Vrolian Prime burn like New Haven burned. But he knew Hyunwoo was right. Becoming genociders themselves would dishonor everyone who died. All ships, Hyunwoo concluded. Jump to Vrolian Prime, let's finish this. The fleet jumped to hyperspace. When they emerged at Vrolian Prime, they found a broken empire waiting for them. The planet's defenses were minimal. Most of their military was destroyed at Earth or scattered across space. What few ships remained were old and outdated. Captain Daewon expected resistance. Instead, his sensors showed Vrolian ships withdrawing, not fleeing, just moving aside. Making a path, a transmission came through. Lieutenant Hana put it on screen. A Vrolian female appeared, her scales marked with symbols of leadership. Human fleet, this is Regent Shizan. I speak for what remains of our government. We surrender, Daewon was surprised. Vrolians didn't surrender. Their culture viewed it as ultimate shame. Why should we accept your surrender? Shizan looked directly at the camera. Her eyes were tired. Because you're right. What we did at New Haven was genocide. A crime against all thinking beings. Our military leaders convinced our people that humans were inferior, barely worth consideration. They lied to us. And we believed them. She paused, gathering courage. When your forces destroyed our fleets, we expected you to destroy our worlds too. But you didn't. You targeted military bases and left civilians alone. You treated prisoners according to your laws. You showed us something we had forgotten. Honor in war. On Vrolian Prime's surface, billions of civilians watched the conversation. Their world was at the mercy of human weapons. One order and their planet would die like New Haven died. But the humans weren't firing. Daewon looked at Lieutenant Hana. She nodded slightly. They had discussed this moment. Prepared for it. We accept your surrender, Regent Shizan. Under the following terms, he sent a document. Shizan read it, her face showing many emotions. The terms were harsh but not cruel. The Vrolian military would be disbanded. War criminals would face trial. Reparations would be paid to the families of New Haven victims. Vrolian space would be demilitarized and monitored, but the most important term came last. Every Vrolian, from children to elders, would be required to learn about New Haven. The names, the faces, the families who died. They would study what their leaders did and why it was wrong. We accept, Shizan said, all terms. The surrender was broadcast across all Vrolian worlds. Some Vrolians were relieved. Others felt shame. A few were angry, but none could deny reality. They had started a war they couldn't win. Now they paid the price. Fleet Admiral Hyunwoo arrived at Vrolian Prime a day later. He established the Occupation Authority with Captain Daewon as military governor. Human soldiers landed on the planet not as invaders but as peacekeepers. Their mission was to ensure order and prevent revenge attacks by angry Vrolians. But something unexpected happened. As humans walked through Vrolian cities, civilians approached them. Some brought food. Others offered help rebuilding damaged areas. An old Vrolian male spoke to a young human soldier named Minho. I saw the footage from New Haven, the Vrolian said, his voice shaking. What we did? The children. I didn't know. They told us humans were dangerous, that your colony was a threat. But it was all lies. Minho didn't know what to say. This enemy, this monster race, was apologizing. He thought of his training officer who died in the Battle of Seoul. He thought of New Haven. But he also thought of Premier Bo-Ra's words. Be better than them. We remember, Minho said carefully. We'll always remember. But we're not here to punish civilians. We're here to make sure it never happens again. Not everyone on Earth agreed with this approach. A woman named Soyeon arrived on Vrolian Prime 3 weeks after the surrender. She had been off-world when New Haven was destroyed. Her mother was Ambassador Jisoo, who died trying to protect others. Soyeon had lost everything. Her mother, her friends, her home. She demanded a meeting with Premier Bo-Ra, who had come to Vrolian Prime for the formal peace ceremony. They met in private in a room that had once belonged to a Vrolian general. Why? Soyeon asked, her voice filled with pain. Why are we being merciful? They murdered my mother. They killed everyone I knew. Why should they live when New Haven is dead? Bo-Ra looked at the young woman with deep sadness. She knew this pain. Her own family had died at New Haven. Because your mother would want this. She spent her life building bridges between species. She died trying to protect others even at the end. If we destroy Vrolian Prime, if we kill their civilians, we spit on everything she stood for. But they deserve it, So-Yeon shouted. Tears ran down her face. They deserve to feel what we felt. Yes, Bora said softly. They do. But if we become killers of innocence to punish killers of innocence, we lose what made us worth saving. We become them. Is that what your mother died for? So we could become monsters? So-Yeon collapsed into a chair, sobbing. Bora sat beside her and held her hand. They cried together, two women who had lost everything to hatred and violence, but they were still alive, still human, still capable of being better. The formal peace ceremony took place a month later. Regent Chizan and Premier Bora stood together before cameras broadcasting to both species. They signed the Treaty of Earth, officially ending the war. Today we acknowledge our crimes, Chizan said to her people. We started a war based on lies and hatred. We committed genocide against a peaceful colony. We have no excuse, no justification. What we did was evil, and we must spend generations making amends, Bora spoke next. Humanity didn't want this war. We wanted peace. But when forced to fight, we fought with everything we had. We showed the galaxy that humans protect their own, that we remember our dead, that we never stop until justice is served. She paused, looking directly at the Vrolian citizens watching. But we also showed mercy, because that's who we are. We could have destroyed your world. We had the power and the justification, but we chose a different path. We chose to be better than those who wronged us. The treaty included provisions for Vrolian children to visit the memorial at New Haven, once they were old enough, to see the place where their leaders' hatred led to mass murder, to understand the cost of viewing others as inferior. Captain Daewon oversaw the first group of Vrolian students visiting New Haven. They were young, barely teenagers. They walked through the memorial gardens reading names on the stones. 2.3 million names. One student, a female named Silra, stopped at a stone marked Young Me and Children. A mother and her children, she whispered. They killed a mother and her children. She looked at Daewon with horror in her eyes. How could they do this? Daewon thought carefully before answering. Because they forgot that every life matters. They saw humans as less than themselves. It made killing us easy. Don't ever forget that lesson. The moment you think another being is worth less than you become capable of anything. Silra nodded, tears on her scaled face. She placed a flower on Young Me's memorial stone. Other students did the same across the memorial. Thousands of flowers for thousands of dead. So-Yeon watched from a distance. She worked now as a peace envoy, helping to build understanding between the species. It wasn't easy. Some days she wanted to scream at every Vrolian she saw, but she remembered her mother's dedication to peace. She remembered Bora's words about being better. A young Vrolian approached her nervously. Ambassador So-Yeon, I wanted to apologize. For my people. For what happened to your mother. So-Yeon looked at this child, barely 16 years old. He had nothing to do with the war. Born after it started, innocent of any crime, but he carried the guilt of his species anyway. What's your name? She asked. Carvel, he replied. Carvel, you didn't kill anyone. You're not responsible for what others did before you were even grown. But you are responsible for what happens now. For making sure this never happens again. Can you do that? The young Vrolian straightened. Yes, Ambassador. I promise. We all promised. 10 years passed. Vrolian Prime had changed dramatically. Where military bases once stood, schools had been built. Where weapons factories operated, hospitals now served all species. The Vrolian people had learned from their mistakes, though the shame would last generations. A ceremony marked the 10th anniversary of the war's end. Regent Chizan, now older, stood beside Premier Bora, who had retired but remained influential.